My name is Faye Ingram, and I was 34 the day my own father called me dead weight. I drove 3 hours back to Hartwell, Ohio, told my family I'd just lost my job, and waited to see who'd still open the door. I never expected to hear my brother's voice through it first. What I heard in that hallway was bad, but what I was carrying in my bag, and what none of them knew I already owned, was about to make it so much worse for exactly the right person. Welcome back to Hidden Family Revenge, where the people everyone underestimates turn out to be holding the one card that matters. If quiet justice and earned boundaries are your kind of story, you're home. Drop a comment and be sure to subscribe. The duplex on Sycamore Street looked smaller than I remembered, the way old houses do when you've grown past them. I parked across the road and sat with the engine off. The upper unit was my parents' place. The lower one they'd rented out for as long as I'd been alive. The mailbox was stuffed so full the little door wouldn't close, and a folded notice was wedged behind the screen door like nobody wanted to be the one to open it. I didn't dress up for this. No watch, no good coat. Just jeans and a flannel and a duffel bag I'd packed light on purpose. I wanted to see the faces before they saw the balance. 16 years I'd been gone. 16 years of birthday cards that arrived 3 days late. Of phone calls that always circled back to what Dale needed. I'd built a whole life they never asked a single real question about. And somewhere along the way, I stopped telling them anything true, because telling them felt like handing over ammunition. So I made up a job loss in the car. Easy lie, clean lie, the kind you can take back later if the people in front of you turn out to deserve it. I climbed the side stairs to the upper landing, raised my hand to knock, and stopped. Through the door I could hear my brother Dale talking low and fast, the way he always talked when he was selling something. My mother's voice underneath, soft and unsure. I lowered my hand. Some part of me already knew. Whatever was happening in that kitchen wasn't waiting on me to arrive. It had been happening for a while. I knocked anyway. The talking stopped dead. Then footsteps, and the door opened on my mother, Bev, who looked at me like I was a bill she'd forgotten was due. "Faye," she said. Not a question. Behind her the kitchen went quiet in that way kitchens do when you've interrupted something. My father, Hal, sat at the table with his reading glasses pushed up on his forehead. Dale stood by the counter, arms folded, a stack of papers face down near the coffee pot. "I lost my job, Mom," I said. I kept my voice tired, a little embarrassed, exactly how a person says it when it's real. I came home for a bit. Didn't know where else to go. I watched the room rearrange itself around those words. My mother's hand went to her collar. My father didn't get up. And Dale? Dale's face did something I'll never forget. Not surprise. Calculation. Like he was running numbers on me and not liking the total. "How much you got saved?" Hal asked. First thing out of his mouth. Not "how are you?" Not "come sit down." How much you got saved? "Not much," I said. That's the problem. Dale made a small sound through his teeth. He slid the face-down papers an inch further from me, the way you move a glass away from a guest you don't trust. My mother said something about putting the kettle on and didn't move to do it. The notice was still wedged in the screen door behind me. Nobody mentioned it. I set my duffel down by the wall like a person who planned to stay, and felt the whole room flinch. So this was the welcome. I'd had worse, but not from them. Dinner was canned soup and the kind of silence that has edges. Dale sat across from me and did most of the talking, which was its own answer. He talked about a job he had coming, a big one, a development out by the county line that was going to fix everything. He'd been saying versions of that sentence since he was 19. My father nodded along like it was scripture. My mother watched her bowl. I asked one careful question. "What's the trouble with the house?" And the table went stiff. "Nothing you need to worry about," Hal said. "We've got it handled," Dale added fast, and there was that word again. Handled. He used it like a lid pressed down on a pot. Then he leaned back and looked at me with something close to a smile. "You know what your problem is, Faye? You always show up empty-handed." It landed exactly where he meant it to. My mother's spoon paused. My father said nothing, which from him was agreement. 16 years, and that was the read on me at this table. The one who took, the one who left, the one with nothing in her hands. I let the silence sit. I've learned that silence is cheaper than the things you say to fill it, and it costs other people more. Maybe, I said, and ate my soup. Dale seemed to feel he'd won something. He gathered up his papers without showing them and tucked them into a folder under his arm, and I clocked the folder the way you clock a thing somebody's hiding. There was a manila corner, an official-looking stamp half visible. He saw me looking and turned, so I couldn't. Whatever was on that paper, it was the real conversation in this house, and it wasn't about me at all. It didn't take a day. After dinner, my father stood at the sink with his back to me and made it simple. "You can't stay here, Faye." I waited. "There's no room," he said. "And we can't carry dead weight. Not now." Dead weight. I turned the words over and they didn't bend. My mother was in the doorway pretending to fold a dish towel. Dale was on the couch with the television loud, but I saw him reach for the remote and turn it down half a notch so he wouldn't miss this. "Okay," I said. "That's all." No argument, no tears, no scene. I picked up the duffel I'd set against the wall an hour before, the one that had made the whole room flinch, and I walked it back out the door. A person who's spent 16 years building something doesn't fall apart on a landing. She does math. On the side stairs, I could feel the cold coming off the river 2 blocks down, and behind me, the door didn't close right away. My mother followed me halfway down. She didn't say sorry. She pressed something into my hands. A sandwich wrapped in a paper towel, made fast, the bread already going soft. And she couldn't look at me when she did it. "Be careful on the road," she said, and went back up. I stood there holding a sandwich from a woman who'd just watched her husband put me out. Then I walked to my car, drove the 11 minutes to the Maple Court Motel out on Route 9, and got a room with 2 double beds I didn't need. I didn't cry. I opened my laptop. Because dead weight, it turns out, is a funny thing to call your lender. Here's the part they didn't know. I don't deliver pizzas, and I never lost a job. I own a company called Larkspur Note Partners, and what we do is unglamorous and quiet and pays very well. We buy mortgage notes that have gone bad, loans the original banks gave up on, and then we do the boring, honest thing almost nobody expects. We work them out. We modify them. We keep families in houses when the math can be made to work, because a performing loan is worth more than an empty one, and because I grew up watching what losing a house does to people. Last month, the firm cleared a little over $200,000. I never told my family any of it. Not because I was hiding wealth like a shameful thing, because the one time I mentioned a promotion, years back, the only question was whether I could help with Dale's truck payment. So I stopped. I let them believe whatever was easiest, and I built. That night at the Maple Court, I sat on the edge of a stranger's mattress and opened the spreadsheet for the Ohio pool we'd closed 3 weeks earlier. 41 notes, picked up at a discount from a regional servicer cleaning its books. I scrolled, half on autopilot, the way you reread a thing you've already read. And then an address stopped my thumb cold. A 2-unit on Sycamore Street, Hartwell. Owner-occupant, delinquent. I read it 3 times. The street where I'd just eaten canned soup. The house where a sandwich had been pressed into my hands. My parents' duplex. And the lender of record, after all the bundling and selling, was a limited liability company in Columbus. Mine. I didn't sleep much. I pulled the full file before sunrise. There's a difference between a name on a spreadsheet and the actual loan, and I needed the actual loan. By 6, I had it on the screen. The note Hal had signed years ago. The refinance stacked on top of it. The second loan after that. I remembered the year of the refi without checking, because it was the year Dale's first business went under and my parents quietly took on debt to bail him out. They'd never said so, but the dates told the story plain. The original mortgage was modest, the kind of payment 2 retired people could carry. Then the refinance had nearly doubled it, and somewhere in there the loan had slipped from current to 30 days late to 90, and the servicer had given up and sold it into a pool, and the pool had landed on my desk. So the bank Dale kept invoking at that kitchen table, the one they were all so afraid of. It didn't exist anymore. There was no faceless institution about to take the house. There was a company in Columbus with a managing member who'd been called dead weight 12 hours earlier and sent down a flight of stairs with a soggy sandwich. I sat with that for a long time. I could have called Hal right then and said the words. I didn't. Because something in this house wasn't adding up, and I've learned never to play a card before you know what game you're at. Dale had a folder he wouldn't show. My father was afraid of a bank that no longer existed. My mother couldn't meet my eyes. I closed the laptop. Whatever was happening here, I was going to watch it first. I checked the room for another 3 nights and told the front desk I was visiting family, which was technically true. Then I did the thing that's harder than confrontation. I went back. I showed up at the duplex mid-morning, sandwich diplomacy in reverse, with a bag of groceries and the unemployed daughter's apology already loaded. I overreacted. I told my mother on the landing. Can I help out while I figure things out? I won't be in the way. Bev let me in. Of course she did. Free hands are free hands, and a daughter who scrubs your kitchen costs nothing. Hal grunted from his chair and went back to the television. I made myself small and useful. I wiped counters and carried out trash and listened, because people forget you when you're useful and quiet, and they say true things in front of furniture. Over 2 mornings, I learned that Dale came by almost every day, that he was dealing with the bank, so my parents wouldn't have to, that he'd told them not to answer letters or phone calls about the house, to send everything straight to him, because the system was designed to confuse people, and he knew how to talk to those folks. I learned that my mother had stopped opening the mail entirely. That's what the stuffed mailbox was. Not laziness. Instruction. And every honest instinct I'd built over a decade in this exact business stood straight up. Because I know what it sounds like when somebody tells a frightened homeowner to stop talking to their lender. I've cleaned up after it. It almost never means what they say it means. I kept wiping the counter. I kept my face easy. And I started counting the days until whatever Dale was building came due. On the 4th morning, I made an excuse and drove down to the county building. The recorder's office in a town like Hartwell is one woman, a counter, and a computer older than my car. I asked the plain questions a curious daughter might ask. What's on file for the Sycamore property? Any recent activity? Anything pending? There was nothing recorded yet. That was good and bad. Good, because it meant no transfer had gone through. Bad, because it meant whatever Dale was doing was still in the part where you fix it or you don't. The clerk mentioned, the way clerks do, that the county had a free service now. You could register an address and get an alert any time a document was filed against it. Deeds, liens, anything. People used it for fraud, she said. Lot of that going around lately. I thanked her and registered my parents' address on the spot, under my own contact, and felt slightly better and slightly worse. Better, because now nothing could move on that house without my phone buzzing. Worse, because I'd just admitted to myself out loud that I expected something too. On the way back, I drove past the duplex slow. Dale's truck was in the drive. The good truck. The new one. The one that didn't square with a man whose business had supposedly collapsed. A man who's truly broke doesn't drive that truck. A man who's about to come into money he hasn't earned yet. He might. I parked at the end of the block and watched him carry that folder up the side stairs again, tucked under his arm the same careful way. Whatever the real conversation in that house was, it lived in that folder. And I was done waiting to see it by accident. I got my chance 2 days later, and it came through the same door that had started all this. I'd run out for milk and let myself back in quiet, and Dale was at the kitchen table with our parents, mid-pitch, voice low and warm and certain. I stopped in the little hallway by the coats. All you have to do is put it in my name, he was saying, just temporary. The bank can't touch what's mine. I've got the credit, I've got the relationships. You stay right here. Nothing changes. You don't pay them another dime. I handle it. My mother said something I couldn't catch. Mom, the alternative is they take it, Dale said, gentle as a knife going in. You want strangers in this kitchen? You want to be out on Route 9 at your age? Sign it over to me and you're safe. That's all this is. Family, protecting family. I stood very still against the coats, because now I had it. He wasn't dealing with the bank. He wasn't saving anybody. He was running the oldest play in the book. Get the scared homeowner to hand you the deed, promise them they can stay, promise you'll carry the loan, and then do whatever you were always going to do with a house you suddenly own free of them. I'd seen it 100 times from the cleanup side. I never thought I'd hear it in my mother's kitchen, in my brother's voice, with my father nodding. Let me think on it, Hal said, and Dale said, Don't think too long, Dad. These things move fast. I set the milk on the hall table and walked back out before they saw me. My hands were steady. They shouldn't have been, but they were. The man showed up the next afternoon, and the second I saw him, I knew the shape of the whole thing. Dale introduced him as Pruitt, a friend, an investor. He does this for people. Pruitt was about 50, soft handshake, expensive boots, the kind of calm that's practiced rather than earned. He sat at my mother's table like he was doing her a favor by being there. I poured coffee and played the dim, grateful daughter, and I listened to him work. He never raised his voice. He talked about how the banks were sharks, how the government wouldn't help, how the only people you could trust were the ones sitting right here. Whatever you do, he said, don't call the lender. Don't answer their letters. They'll twist your words. Let Dale and me handle the paperwork. We've got a process. Don't call the lender. There it was, clean as a bell. The single sentence that turns a sad story into a crime. No honest person who wants to save your home tells you to stop talking to the people you owe. The lender is the one party in the whole mess that's legally required to offer you options. I knew that better than anyone in that room, because the lender, technically, was me. Pruitt slid a single sheet toward my father. A letter of intent, he called it, just to get the ball rolling. Hal reached for a pen. My mother's hand fluttered up toward the paper and stopped. We'll look it over first, I heard myself say, light and dumb, refilling Pruitt's cup so the interruption felt like service. He smiled at me the way men like him smile at furniture. But Hal set the pen down. And I had bought us a few days. Now I needed to know exactly who Pruitt was. I know what some of you are thinking, because I'd be thinking it too. Just tell them. Stand up at that table. Say I'm not broke. Say I own the loan. Say Dale's a liar and Pruitt's a thief. And end it. I wanted to. Every honest part of me wanted to. But I've spent years on the wrong end of these schemes, and I've learned the hardest lesson they teach. You don't disarm a trap by announcing you've seen it. You announce it, and Dale calls me jealous, broke, bitter. The daughter who ran off and came crawling back with nothing, trying to blow up the one plan that saves the house. He'd had years to paint me that color, and they were already half painted. Pruitt would gather his papers and vanish to the next frightened family. No record, no proof. Free to do it again. And the deed would sit there unsigned for a week and signed the moment I left town. A scheme you expose with feelings dies as a he, she said. A scheme you expose with documents dies on the table. So I stayed dim. I stayed useful. And I started pulling threads. Stay with me, because this is the part where the quiet pays off. If you've ever had to hold your tongue just long enough to do the thing right, to gather the proof instead of the satisfaction, then you already understand the next few days of my life. You don't shout down a liar at your own mother's table. You outpaper him. Subscribe so you don't miss how this turns, because the moment I laid the right page down in front of the right people is the moment I'd been building toward for 16 years without knowing it. People like Pruitt are careful, but they're not invisible. They leave a trail in the one place that doesn't forget. Public property records. Back at the motel, I did what I do for a living. I ran his name through the county systems in 3 counties around Hartwell, the way I'd vet a counterparty before buying a note off them. It took most of the night, and it was worth every hour. Pruitt, or the rotating little LLCs he hid behind, had done this before. The pattern was almost a signature once you knew to look for it. A homeowner in trouble. A quitclaim deed transferring the property to one of his shells, recorded for $1. Love and affection. the language people use when no real money changes hands. Then a fresh mortgage taken out against the house at its full value within weeks. Then nothing. No payments to the prior loan, no rescue, just the equity pulled out clean and the original owner still on the hook for a debt on a house they no longer owned. Two of them had ended in eviction. One old man had died in a rental 2 streets from the home he'd built. I sat in that ugly motel chair and felt something cold and useful settle in my chest. Not rage. Rage is loud and it makes mistakes. This was the other thing. The clarity that comes when the math finally closes. Pruitt wasn't a risk to my parents' future. He was their future, if nobody stopped him. And Dale had brought him to the table on purpose because Dale was getting a cut, or Dale was getting the house, or both. I printed everything. I have always trusted paper more than people. That night, for the first time, paper was going to earn it. The thaw came dressed as a Sunday breakfast. My mother called the motel. Dale had given her my number, probably to keep tabs, and said, "Come eat. No fight, just family." I went, because the table was exactly where I needed to be. Bev made eggs and didn't quite meet my eyes, and Hal read the paper, and Dale wasn't there yet, and for 10 minutes it almost felt like a house instead of a stage. Then my mother sent me to clear the table, and that's when I saw it. A manila folder, set down on the end of the table under a stack of grocery flyers, the corner of it sticking out the way things do when somebody set them down in a hurry. I'd seen that folder under Dale's arm 3 times now. I lifted the flyers like I was just tidying. Inside was the whole machine. A quitclaim deed, already typed, already filled in. Transferring the Sycamore duplex from Harold and Beverly Ingram to Ingram Holdings LLC. Not Dale's name. A shell. Underneath it, a lease agreement that would let my parents rent back their own home, with a number on it higher than their mortgage payment had ever been. And clipped to the front, a small card. A mobile notary, booked. A name, a time, a date. The coming Sunday, 1 week out, 10 in the morning, right here at this kitchen table. I stood there holding flyers over the blueprint of a robbery, and I made myself put everything back exactly as it was. Corner out, flyers on top. My hands didn't shake. I'd been waiting to see this paper for 2 weeks, and now I had the one thing a scheme can't survive: its own schedule. 7 days. I knew when. I knew where. And I knew, now, exactly what I was going to bring, too. Dale came in while I was drying the last plate, and he could tell something had shifted in the room even if he couldn't name it. He's stupid about a lot of things, but he's never been stupid about advantage. He looked at me, then at the end of the table where the flyers sat, and back at me. I kept drying the plate. "You're awful helpful all of a sudden," he said. "Got nowhere else to be," I said. "No job, remember?" He smiled, and there it was, the line he loved, polished from use. "That's the thing about you, Faye. You always show up empty-handed." Second time he'd handed it to me. I let it sit. The way you let a man keep talking when he's telling you who he is. "You always say that," I said. "Because it's always true." He hung his coat on the chair right next to where the folder lived, and I understood he had no idea I'd already read his whole hand. To him, I was still the broke sister, the leaver, the one with nothing in her hands, a problem to be managed, not a threat to be feared. That misread was the most valuable thing in the house. I finished the plate. I set it in the rack. I told my mother thank you for breakfast and that I'd see them soon, and I meant the soon more than she knew. On the drive back to the Maple Court, I ran the days. 7 of them. A notary booked, a deed typed, a man with a trail in 3 counties, and a brother so sure of his red on me that he'd hung his coat over the proof. Empty-handed. I almost laughed. By Sunday, I'd be the only person in that kitchen holding anything that mattered. My mother called again 2 nights later, late, when Hal was asleep. She didn't say much at first, just breathing on the line, and then, "Are you really okay, Faye? Out there at that motel?" It was the first true question she'd asked me in years, and it caught me sideways. "I'm fine, Mom," I said. "Better than fine." She was quiet. Then it came out of her in a rush, low and frightened, the dam giving way. She didn't understand the papers. Dale talked so fast. There were so many pages, and Pruitt used words she didn't know, and every time she asked a question, they answered a different one. She just didn't want to lose the house. She didn't want to be the reason your father loses the house, she said, and her voice broke on it. He worked 40 years for that place. If I sign wrong, if I sign right, I don't even know which is which anymore. And I understood something I'd been too angry to see. My mother wasn't a villain at that table. She was a hostage who'd been told the only way out was to hand over the keys. She'd watched her husband put her daughter out on the stairs because she was just as scared of Hal's shame as she was of the bank, and fear makes people do the math wrong. It didn't excuse the sandwich, or the silence, or any of it, but it explained it. "Mom," I said, careful, "don't sign anything. Not Sunday, not any day. Promise me you'll wait." A pause. "Dale says Sunday's the last chance." "Dale's wrong," I said. "Just wait." She didn't promise, but she didn't hang up right away either, and for my mother, that was almost the same thing. I had 4 days, and I spent them building the only kind of weapon I've ever trusted. As the holder of the note, I had power Dale and Pruitt didn't know existed in the room, and I was going to use every inch of it the legal, recorded, unkillable way. First, I had my servicer confirm the loan's exact status and pull a current payoff and a full payment history, stamped and dated. Second, I built a real loan modification. Not a favor, not a gift, an actual restructure that took the bloated refinance payment and brought it back down to something two retired people could carry, with terms a court would call fair and a notary could witness clean. I priced it so the firm wouldn't lose money, because a rescue you can't sustain is just a slower version of the trap. Third, I called a HUD-approved housing counselor I'd worked with before and looped her in, so there'd be an independent, free, official voice in the room confirming every number I put on the table. And fourth, I assembled the file on Pruitt, the deeds, the shells, the strip-and-run pattern across 3 counties, the eviction in one, and the dead man in another. I put it all in a single folder of my own, neat, tabbed. The truth in the order you'd want to hear it. I want to be clear about something. I didn't inherit a way out. Nobody handed me a secret card to flip. I bought this note with money I earned, building a company in the dark while my family thought I was nothing, and I spent 4 nights at a motel turning that ownership into a thing I could lay on a table. The win wasn't going to fall into my hands on Sunday. I was going to walk in and take it. Dale felt me coming before he could see why. Maybe my mother said something. Maybe he just sensed that the broke sister he'd dismissed had gotten quiet in a different way. Whatever it was, on Thursday, the plan jumped its rails. My mother called, near tears. Dale had moved the signing up. Not Sunday now, Friday afternoon. Tomorrow. He says there's no reason to wait, that waiting's dangerous, that you've been filling my head, she said. He says you're broke and bitter, and you'll ruin the only chance we've got. There it was. He'd started painting me before I'd lifted a brush. I sat down on the edge of the motel bed and made myself breathe slow. Friday afternoon. That gave me less than a day, and it changed nothing and everything. Nothing, because my file was already built. The modification, the payoff, the counselor, the Pruitt record, all of it ready. Everything. Because a man who moves the signing up by 2 days is a man who's afraid, and frightened men make their worst plays in a hurry. "Mom," I said, "where? And what time?" "The kitchen," she said. 3 o'clock. He's bringing Pruitt and the notary, and he asked Aunt Carol and your cousin Reese to come too. For witnesses, he said. Witnesses. He wanted family in the room, not to protect my parents, but to surround them with faces, to make backing out feel like a betrayal in front of everyone. He thought a crowd was his advantage. He was about to learn it was mine. I called the counselor and moved her to Friday. I confirmed the notary in my own file was current. And I laid out my plain clothes for the morning because I wanted Dale comfortable right up until the second he shouldn't be. Friday morning, I went over early, before the others, and I gave my father one last door. I found him alone on the landing with his coffee, and I sat down beside him like the broke daughter with nothing to offer but worry. Dad, I said, let me look at the bank papers. Just once. I'm good with this kind of thing. I used to do office work. Soft, harmless, true enough. He didn't even turn his head. Dale's got it, he said. Dad, please. Let me read what you're about to sign. Dale's got it, Faye. And then, because he couldn't help himself, because the wound was still open between us, he added the thing I'd come 3 hours and 16 years to hear him take back. You can't even keep a job. You're going to lecture me about money? Dead weight. He didn't say the words this time, but they were sitting right there under the ones he did say, the same shape, the same weight. I looked at my father, 66 years old, scared and proud and about to sign his home away to a stranger because admitting he needed help would cost him more than the house. And I felt the last of my hesitation go. I'd given him the door. I'd given all of them doors. The wait, the look, the careful questions. They'd shut everyone. Okay, Dad, I said, and stood, and went to help my mother set out coffee cups for the people who'd come to rob her. Because here's what I'd decided in the quiet. I wasn't going to save them in private and let them keep their pride. I was going to save the house at the kitchen table in front of everyone, with the truth on paper. 3 o'clock couldn't come fast enough. I should tell you why I couldn't just stop it from the outside because I tried. I'd thought about it for days. I'm the note holder. Couldn't I simply forbid the transfer? Call it off? Send a letter? Here's the hard truth I ran into. A quitclaim deed between private parties doesn't need my permission to be signed. Dale could put that deed in front of my parents, and they could sign it, and the notary could stamp it, and it would be a real document the same hour, whether I liked it or not. My lien would survive the transfer. The debt would still ride with the house, but the title would move, and untangling a fraudulent transfer after the fact means lawyers, months, sometimes the home gone before the paperwork catches up. I couldn't cancel Dale's notary. I couldn't lock my parents' own front door against them. The only place to kill this clean was the place it was happening, in the moment it happened, with something nobody in that room could argue with. So I'd outpaper him in person. Here's what I'd learned by then, and it's the thing I'd tell anyone facing a smiling man with a pen. You can't outshout a liar at your own kitchen table. You outpaper him. I packed one folder. No speeches rehearsed, no tears planned. Just the truth, stamped and witnessed, in the order it needed to land. If you're the quiet one in your family, the one who keeps the receipts while everyone else keeps the drama, then this next part is for you. Hit subscribe and stay close, because at 3 o'clock I was going to walk into that kitchen looking like nothing and walk out as the only thing standing between my parents and a man who eats houses for a living. The hour before 3 had the awful calm of a thing already in motion. Aunt Carol arrived first, all perfume and worry, asking my mother if she was holding up, and my cousin Reese slouched in behind her looking at his phone. Dale was electric, too loud, moving around the kitchen like a host. He'd dressed up. New shirt, hair combed, the whole performance of a man about to do his family a great kindness. Pruitt came at 1:15, soft boots on the stairs, briefcase in hand, and he greeted my parents by their first names like old friends. The mobile notary sat up at the end of the table, a tired woman with a stamp and a logbook who had no idea she'd been hired to witness a robbery. And there I was, in my jeans and flannel, pouring coffee, the broke daughter nobody had bothered to disinvite because nobody thought I mattered. Dale actually patted my shoulder on his way past. Glad you're here for this, Faye, he said. Family should see family taken care of. I smiled and said something grateful and dumb. My folder sat in my bag against the wall, the same bag that had made the room flinch on the first night, the same wall. My phone was in my pocket, and the county alert was armed on the address, though I prayed I wouldn't need it as a backstop. 3 o'clock. Pruitt snapped his briefcase open. Dale slid the manila folder out from under its grocery flyers and set the quitclaim deed in front of my father, smoothing it flat with both hands like a man laying a tablecloth for a feast. "Okay, Dad," he said, warm as Sunday. "Mom, right here on the line, and then we're all safe." My father picked up the pen. I let him hold the pen for exactly one breath, long enough for the room to lean in, for Pruitt to almost smile, for Dale to think he'd won. Then I set down the coffee pot and I said, in the same easy voice I'd used to wipe their counters for 2 weeks, "Before anyone signs anything, I think you should know who actually holds the loan on this house." The pen stopped above the paper. Dale's head came around. "Faye, sit down," he said, still smiling, but the smile had a crack in it now. "This doesn't concern you." "It concerns me more than anyone in this room," I said, and I walked to my bag against the wall and took out my folder. Not fast. Not dramatic. Just a woman retrieving paperwork. "Faye. Sharper now. You don't know what you're talking about. You've been gone 16 years. You show up broke and you think—" "I'm not broke, Dale." I said it plainly, the way you state a fact a person needs in order to understand the next 10 minutes of their life. The kitchen went very still. Aunt Carol's eyes ticked between us. Reese finally looked up from his phone. My mother's hand found the edge of the table. And Pruitt. Pruitt went quiet in the particular way of a man recalculating his exits. I set my folder on the table, square in the light, next to the deed Dale had smoothed so lovingly flat. "I told you all I lost my job," I said. "That wasn't true. I wanted to see how you'd treat me when you thought I had nothing." I opened the folder to the first tab. "Now let me show you what I actually have. I own a company called Larkspur Note Partners," I said. "We buy mortgage loans and we work them out. It's not exciting and it pays well. And I never told any of you because the one time I mentioned money, it became Dale's truck payment." I let that sit 1 second, no longer. 3 weeks ago, my company closed on a pool of loans out of a regional servicer, 41 of them, one of those loans. I turned the first page so my father could see the address printed at the top, his own address, the house he'd worked 40 years for. "Is this one? The mortgage on this house. The bank Dale keeps telling you is coming to take everything." I looked at my father and I kept my voice level, because this was the part that mattered. "Dad, there is no bank coming. Not anymore. The loan on your house was sold, and sold again, and 3 weeks ago it landed with me. I am the lender. The thing you've all been so afraid of, the faceless company that was going to put you out on Route 9. It's me. It's been me since before I knocked on that door." Nobody moved. My mother made a small sound, half a laugh, half a sob, her hand pressed flat to her chest. Hal's face had gone gray and slack, the pen still in his fingers, hovering over a deed that suddenly meant something entirely different than it had a minute ago. And Dale. Dale stood up so fast his chair scraped the floor. "That's a lie," he said, too loud. "She's lying, she's broke, she's trying to wreck this. Sit down, Dale." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't have to. That was the whole secret of the moment, and I'd waited 16 years to learn it. He was shouting. I wasn't. And in a quiet kitchen, the person who isn't shouting is the one holding the room. "Sit down," I said again, gentle, "and let me explain to everyone what you were actually about to have them sign." I turned the pages one at a time, and I laid each one down where everyone could see it, because paper in the light is louder than any voice. "This deed Dale wants you to sign," I said, "doesn't put the house in Dale's name. Read it. It puts it in Ingram Holdings, a company. Not your son. A shell." I set the lease beside it. "And this is what you'd sign next. A lease, so you can rent your own home back. Look at the number. It's higher than your mortgage ever was. You'd be paying more to live in the house you already own, except you wouldn't own it anymore." Aunt Carol leaned in and read, and her mouth fell open. "And this," I said, and laid down the file I'd built over those long motel nights, "is Pruitt. 3 counties. The same move every time. A frightened family signs a quitclaim for $1, love and affection. Then a new loan gets taken against the house at full value. The cash walks out the door, and the family that signed is still on the hook for the debt with nothing left to show. Two of these ended in eviction. One man died in a rental 2 streets from a house he built. That's not a rescue. That's the business. I straightened up. Dale was breathing hard, fists on the table, face dark. You always told me I show up empty-handed, I said, and I finally let the line turn over in the air between us. Empty-handed. Dale. I'm the only person at this table holding the one piece of paper your whole plan stands on. I hold the note. There is no signing this house away from me. He exploded then, the way I'd known he would. Words tumbling over each other. Jealous? Broke? Leaver. Who do you think you are? And the louder he got, the smaller he looked. And the whole room watched it happen. My mother had stopped crying. She was just staring at her son like she was seeing him for the first time, and Hal set the pen down on the table, very carefully, like it had grown hot in his hand. Pruitt was already standing, briefcase in hand, doing the smooth retreat I'd watched men like him do my whole career. This is a family matter, he said, light and unbothered. I'll let you all talk. Sit down a second, Mr. Pruitt, I said, and something in my voice made the notary's pen stop moving. Before you go, you should know the county has an alert filed on this address now. Any document recorded against this property, any deed, any new mortgage, pings my phone the same day. So whatever you were planning to do with the title after today, it doesn't have a quiet exit anymore. I let him hear it land. And the lender on the existing loan. That's me. So if a new mortgage gets taken out on this house, I'm the first call the county makes. You've never had to do one of these in front of the actual note holder before. I understand it complicates the math. His face didn't change much. Men like him have practiced faces. But he picked up his briefcase, and he nodded once to Dale, and he went down the side stairs without another word, and we all knew he wasn't coming back. The notary closed her logbook and asked, carefully, if her services were still required. No, ma'am, I said. Thank you for coming. She left too. Dale was still standing, but the air had gone out of him, and Aunt Carol was looking at him now with the same horror she'd turned on the deed. My mother spoke for the first time. Dale, she said. You were going to... And she couldn't finish it. I finished it for her, quiet, looking straight at my brother. He was going to take your house and let a stranger strip it and leave you renting your own kitchen. Then I said the only hard thing I said all day. I came here to see if you'd love me when I was nothing, but I don't save people who'd rob their own mother. That part isn't about love. It's about who gets to stay at this table. Then I did the thing I'd actually come to do, and I want to be clear, it wasn't a gift. I opened the last tab in my folder and I set the modification down in front of my parents, and beside it the card for the HUD counselor, who I'd asked to be on the phone at 3:15 and who rang right on time. This is real, I said, while the counselor introduced herself on speaker and confirmed she was independent and free and worked for no one in this room. This is a modification on your existing loan, my loan. It takes the payment Dale's refinance ballooned and brings it back down to what 2 retired people can carry. The counselor will walk you through every line. You don't owe me the house. You don't sign anything over to anyone. You keep the title, you keep the home, and the payment becomes something you can actually make. Hal stared at the page, and at me, and his jaw worked, and he didn't say thank you because he didn't know how to, without admitting what the moment cost his pride. So I gave him a way out of even that. There are conditions, I said, flat and businesslike, because dignity needs an exchange to hold on to. Payments come to my servicer, on time, in writing. The lease idea is dead, and Dale's name goes nowhere near this title, now or ever. Those are my terms as the lender. Take them or don't. Hal took them. Of course he took them. They were the only honest offer that had crossed his table in months. My mother signed where the counselor told her to, hands steady for the first time in weeks. Dale watched his whole plan get recorded out of existence, one initialed line at a time, and somewhere in there he stopped being the loudest person in the room and started being the smallest. The house was safe. Not given. Not rescued. Restructured, on paper, by the daughter they called dead weight. The modification recorded clean that week, and my phone never buzzed with an alert again, which told me Pruitt had moved on to easier kitchens. Dale stopped coming by. He sent me one long message about loyalty and family, and how I'd humiliated him, and I read it once and didn't answer, because some letters are just the sound a trap makes when it closes empty. Aunt Carol called my mother, and the story went around the family the way stories do in a small town, and the shape it took surprised me. Not the broke daughter who came back, but the one who'd kept the house. My father never did say sorry, not in words. But the next time I drove up, he'd put my old room back together, the bed made, the closet cleared, and he stood in the doorway of it and said, "There's room now, if you want it." It wasn't an apology. It was a man moving furniture instead of saying a thing he couldn't say, and from Hal, that was the whole speech. My mother walked me to my car when I left, and this time she looked at me. "I should have come down those stairs and left with you that night," she said. "I know I should have." I told her I knew she was scared. I didn't tell her it was fine, because it wasn't. And we both deserved the truth more than the comfort. I set my own terms after that. I'd help with the house because I held the note, and I'm not in the business of putting families out. But I wasn't the family bank, and I wasn't going to earn my place at that table by paying for it. I'd already paid enough. From here on, they could have me as a daughter or not at all. They spent 16 years measuring me by what they thought I could give them, and they never once noticed that the quiet thing I'd built in the dark was the only thing in the world that could actually save them. That's my story. One lie about being broke, one folder of paper, and a house that almost slipped away at a kitchen table on a Friday afternoon. If this reminded you to check who really holds your loan, or to never sign anything under pressure from someone telling you not to call your lender, take that as your sign and look into it today. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. Drop a comment, hit subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.